For more, let's go to Washington and correspondent Ketevan Gorgestani. Ketevan, Alexander Vindman didn't stop there. He says as early as July 10th, he had warning bells going off when he had a conversation with Donald Trump's ambassador to the European Union, Gordon Sondland.
Yes, Lieutenant Colonel Alexander Vindman saying that he twice reported those concerned. As you mentioned, there was that July 10th and the July 25th phone call. Vindman, who has been very eager to show that he had gone through the proper channels. He said that he came from a culture, the military culture, that said that he had to go through the proper channels to refer to his superiors. And that's exactly what he did. He said that he had concerns about that July 25th phone call, as well as that meeting. He called them inappropriate, improper, and he said that the reason that he raised those concerns through the proper channels to the National Security Council top attorney was out of sense of duty. This was a way of hitting back at an argument and an attack by the Republicans, which is that he is part of the never Trumpers, that he is against the United States president, that he is against Donald Trump's policy in Ukraine. He says that he was simply acting accordingly to what his job description was. He simply flagged the issue. He also refused, in the line of questioning by the Democrats, to go full on against that July 25th phone call, saying, for example, that the transcript, even though there were ellipses in there, that the elements that were left out that he had tried to put back in but were eventually left out, that did not make it inappropriate. But what made it inappropriate was the conduct of the U.S. president. So he really focused on that, and he really came under attack from the Republicans who were questioning not only his loyalty to the United States, but also this question of whether he is a never Trumper or not. And he repeatedly insisted on his service to the United States, on the fact that he was simply objective and doing his job the proper way.
Yeah, Alexander Vindman, directly there when that July 25th phone call happened, and that's takes these impeachment hearings into new territory.
Yes, it is completely different from what we saw last week, and that was the argument of the Republicans last week was, well, these witnesses simply have nothing to do with the matter at hand. They weren't there for the July 25th phone call, so they have second-hand knowledge at best, even third-hand sometimes. Well, with these two witnesses, Vindman and Jennifer Williams, well, this argument simply doesn't hold because both of them were actually listening in on that July 25th phone call. So this argument totally goes out the window. The Republicans have been sort of moving the attacks now on the character of the witnesses and no longer on whether they had firsthand knowledge, which they did. So they really focused on attacking the loyalty for Alexander Vindman and the bipartisan, the lack of objectivity of Jennifer Williams. We saw the president himself over the weekend tweeting an attack on Jennifer Williams, calling her a part of the never Trumpers. And that seems to be the line of the Republicans who, through Jim Jordan, really viciously attacked Alexander Vindman, bringing up something that hadn't come up in the private hearings, which is that Alexander Vindman was offered by the Ukrainian government a possible job as Minister of Defense, and that he had turned it down. But this really seemed to be going towards that argument by the Republicans that he had maybe dueling loyalties towards the United States and his country of birth, Ukraine.
Yeah, and there was this exchange at one point where Vindman says, in effect, that, hey, you're trying to make me out the whistleblower.
Yes, that was the other line of questioning by the Republicans. They were trailing very close to something that looked like trying to get Alexander Vindman to out the whistleblower. They were asking him about who he spoke to about that July 25th phone call, with who he had discussions about the whole matter at hand. And the Democrats, of course, jumping in, warning that any attempt to out the whistleblower would be a very dangerous, and Alexander Vindman himself not being sucked in to that and really removing himself, and his lawyer there also saying that he was instructed not to answer any questions that could in any way give any details as to the identity of that whistleblower. And we've seen that through the hearings last week, and we're probably going to see it more in the coming days.